Between the towering glass monoliths of downtown, Johnny Depp emerged from the grand entrance of a luxury hotel. The air was filled with the usual urban symphony, car horns honking in the distance, the chatter of passers-by, and the faint rumble of construction work echoing from a few blocks away. Dressed in his signature eclectic style, sunglasses perched on his nose, Johnny made his way toward the sleek black limousine waiting at the curb. His chauffeur, a tall man in his 50s named Thomas, stood at attention beside the vehicle. With practiced efficiency, Thomas opened the rear door as Johnny approached. "Good morning, Mr. Depp," he said with a polite nod. "I trust you had a pleasant stay?" Johnny returned the greeting with a warm smile. "Morning, Thomas. It was fine, thanks. Looking forward to getting back home, though. But we still need to make one more stop for a photo shoot session." As Johnny was about to slide into the plush leather interior of the limo, a small figure darted past him, moving with surprising speed. Before he could fully register what was happening, he felt something latch onto his leg. Looking down, he saw a little girl, completely bald, clinging to him with all her might. Her body trembled, and her eyes remained fixed on something in the distance, refusing to meet his gaze. Caught off guard, Johnny gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Hey there," he said softly, trying to catch her eye. "Are you all right?" Before the child could respond, an angry shout pierced the air. The girl's grip on Johnny's leg tightened for a moment before she abruptly let go and fled without a word, disappearing into the crowd of pedestrians. A red-faced man in his 40s, wearing an apron emblazoned with the logo of a nearby convenience store, approached Johnny, his eyes still focused on the direction the girl had run. "That little brat," the man spat, his words laced with bitterness. "She's always hanging around my store, scaring away customers. Brings nothing but bad luck, I tell you." Johnny raised an eyebrow, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Has she actually done anything wrong? Stolen something?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying a hint of challenge. The store owner, still caught up in his rant, continued, "No, she doesn't actually steal anything. She just strolls through the aisles looking and touching everything. Always touching, never buying. It's unsettling, I tell you. My regulars don't like it and neither do I. I think it's all part of her plan, biding her time until I let my guard down so she can steal something." Mid-sentence, the man's eyes finally focused on Johnny, and recognition dawned on his face. His anger evaporated instantly, replaced by a look of embarrassment and awe. "Oh my God," he stammered, his cheeks flushing an even deeper shade of red. You're Johnny Depp. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't realize, and I didn't mean to." Johnny held up a hand, silencing the man's flustered apologies. "It's all right," he said, his tone measured. "But let me ask you again. Has this girl ever actually broken or disrupted anything in your store?" The store owner shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between Johnny and the direction the girl had fled. "Well, no," he admitted reluctantly. "But she's always there. It's not right." Johnny nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said, his voice taking on a gentle, almost philosophical tone, "I've learned in my life that it's not wise to judge people for crimes they haven't committed. Maybe there's more to her story than meets the eye." With that, Johnny turned and slid into the waiting limousine. Thomas closed the door behind him, muffling the store owner's final bitter retort. "I don't like you celebrities anyway," the man muttered, his voice barely audible through the tinted glass. "Never care about what's really going on in the world." As the limousine pulled away from the curb, Johnny leaned back in his seat, his mind still on the strange encounter. The girl's frightened eyes and the store owner's misplaced anger lingered in his thoughts as the city scenery began to roll by outside the window. As the limousine merged into the morning traffic, Johnny leaned forward, addressing his chauffeur. "Thomas," he said, his voice carrying a note of urgency, "could you drive a bit slower than usual? I want to keep an eye out for something." Thomas nodded, adjusting his speed accordingly. "Of course, Mr. Depp. Is everything all right?" Johnny's gaze swept the streets through the tinted windows, his eyes sharp and searching for any trace of the little girl he'd just seen. "I'm not sure," he said, his brow knitted in focus. "There was a child back there. I need to make sure she's okay. She's bald, looks about 9 or 10 years old. Help me look for her." Surely, sir, came the quick response, steady and reassuring. The city landscape rolled by at a more leisurely pace, bustling sidewalks filled with morning commuters, street vendors setting up their carts, and the occasional group of tourists already out exploring. Johnny's gaze darted from person to person, looking for that small bald head in the sea of faces. Just as he was about to give up hope, he spotted a familiar figure huddled against the wall outside another convenience store at the next block. "Thomas," he said quickly, "could you pull over here, please?" The limousine came to a smooth stop, and Johnny stepped out onto the sidewalk, his signature sunglasses in place. He approached the girl slowly, not wanting to startle her. She sat on the ground, a small paper cup extended in front of her for donations. Her posture spoke of exhaustion and resignation, but as Johnny drew near, her eyes lit up with recognition. Johnny crouched down to her level, offering a gentle smile. "Hello again," he said softly. He reached into his wallet, pulling out several large bills and placing them in her cup. The girl's eyes widened at the generous donation, and without warning she lunged forward, wrapping her arms around Johnny's leg once more. This time, however, the embrace was one of joy rather than fear. "Thank you," she exclaimed, her voice muffled against the fabric of his pants. Then, looking up at him with wonder in her eyes, she asked, "Are you Captain Jack Sparrow? Where's your ship?" Johnny couldn't help but chuckle, the girl's innocence and enthusiasm warming his heart despite the sadness of her situation. "Well, love," he said, slipping into his Jack Sparrow voice. "The Black Pearl is safely anchored in a secret cove, waiting for her next adventure. But tell me, what's a brave little pirate like yourself doing out here all alone?" The girl's smile faltered slightly, and she glanced around nervously before looking back at Johnny. "Captain Jack Sparrow," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Please help me." Johnny's hand moved toward his wallet again, but the girl shook her head vigorously. "Not money," she said, her eyes pleading. "I need." Before she could finish her sentence, a small crowd started to form around them. Fans recognizing Johnny approached with phones in hand, calling his name and eagerly asking for pictures. Some murmured questions, speculating about what the celebrity was doing with a homeless girl. The girl flinched, shrinking back as the growing attention overwhelmed her. Johnny instinctively took a step back, shielding her as he quickly assessed the situation. Something was very wrong and he needed to act fast. Johnny acted swiftly. Sensing the girl's unease, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, love," he whispered. He glanced up at the growing crowd, their phones flashing as they snapped photos. He had to get her out of there before the situation spiraled out of control. Thomas, ever perceptive, stepped forward, creating a barrier between Johnny and the eager fans. "Mr. Depp, we should move," he said, his voice calm but firm. Johnny nodded and looked down at the girl. "Come with me, sweetheart. We'll talk somewhere quieter." The girl hesitated, her wide eyes darting from Johnny to the flashing cameras, then back again. Finally, she gave a small nod. Johnny took her tiny hand and led her toward the limousine. Thomas swiftly opened the door, and Johnny helped her inside before climbing in himself. The moment the door shut, muffling the noise from outside, the girl exhaled sharply, her small frame trembling. Johnny took off his sunglasses, his gaze soft and full of concern. "You're safe now," he reassured her. "Now tell me what's going on." The girl fidgeted, her hands twisting in her lap. "My name's Sonia," she finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Johnny nodded. "That's a lovely name, Sonia." She swallowed hard. "I live in an orphanage, but I don't want to go back." Johnny's brows furrowed. "Why not? Is someone hurting you there?" Sonia hesitated before shaking her head. "No, not exactly. But they don't have enough money. The doctors there said I'm really sick, and they can't get me the medicine I need. So I ran away to try and get money myself." Johnny felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had suspected something serious, but hearing her say it confirmed his worst fears. He exchanged a glance with Thomas through the rearview mirror. "Sonia," Johnny said gently, "what kind of sickness do you have?" Sonia looked down at her lap. "The doctor said cancer, but I don't know the big words they used. Just that I need treatment soon." Johnny's heart clenched. He took a slow breath, composing himself. We're going to get you help, all right? Promise. But first we need to take you back to the orphanage so we can talk to the people in charge. Will you trust me on this? Sonia hesitated again, but something in Johnny's voice must have reassured her because she nodded. Okay, but can you stay with me? Johnny gave her a warm smile. Of course, love. You're not alone in this. He turned to Thomas. Take us to her orphanage. We need to get some answers. 15 minutes later, the limousine pulled up in front of a worn-down building with a faded sign that read Hope's Haven Orphanage. The structure was old but maintained, its cracked walls and peeling paint telling the story of years of struggle. Johnny stepped out first, offering a reassuring smile to Sonia before helping her down. She clung to his hand as they approached the front door. An elderly woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun appeared at the entrance, her expression a mixture of relief and worry. Sonia, she exclaimed, we've been so worried about you. Where have you been? Sonia hesitated, shifting slightly behind Johnny. The woman's eyes moved to Johnny, and recognition dawned on her face. Mr. Depp, she asked, clearly surprised. What are you doing here? Johnny offered a polite smile. I found Sonia in the city, and she told me a little about her situation. I wanted to talk to you about her medical condition. Is there somewhere private we can speak? The woman nodded quickly. Of course. Please come inside. Inside the orphanage, the walls were lined with faded drawings and shelves filled with well-worn books. Children's laughter echoed faintly from another room, but the overall atmosphere felt subdued, weighed down by financial strain. The woman led them into a small office, offering Johnny a seat. I'm Miss Abigail, the head caretaker, she introduced herself. First, I want to thank you for bringing Sonia back safely. She's had a rough time. Johnny nodded. She told me about her illness. Can you explain what's going on? Miss Abigail sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. Sonia was diagnosed with stage 3 malignant melanoma. The doctors said she needs immediate treatment, but we simply don't have the funds. We applied for assistance, but the waiting list is long, and time isn't on her side. The medical bills alone are beyond what we can manage. Johnny's jaw tightened. So she's been trying to raise money on her own? Miss Abigail nodded, her eyes welling up. She's so brave, but she's just a child. No child should have to bear that burden. We do everything we can, but... Her voice cracked. We're stretched too thin. Johnny leaned forward, his decision already made. I want to help. Whatever Sonia needs, medication, hospital expenses, I'll cover it. She's not fighting this alone anymore. Miss Abigail gasped, her hands trembling. Mr. Depp, that's incredibly generous, but... No buts, Johnny interrupted softly. No child should have to beg for their life. I have the means, and I'm going to make sure she gets the care she deserves. Tears spilled down Miss Abigail's cheeks as she whispered, Thank you. You have no idea what this means. Johnny smiled warmly. I think I do. But there's one more thing. I don't just want to help Sonia. I want to help all the kids here. This place needs resources, better medical care, and a future. Let's make that happen. Miss Abigail clasped her hands together, her breath catching in her throat. You would do that? Johnny nodded. Starting today. But first, let's get Sonia to a doctor. Miss Abigail wiped her tears away and stood. I'll get the necessary papers. We can take her right away. Johnny turned to Sonia, who had been quietly listening. What do you say, love? Ready to get better? Sonia's eyes shimmered with hope for the first time. She nodded eagerly, throwing her arms around Johnny. Thank you, Captain Sparrow. Johnny chuckled, hugging her back. Anytime, first mate. As they left the orphanage together, Johnny knew this was just the beginning. But he had made a promise and he intended to keep it. As the limousine pulled up to the hospital, Johnny kept a reassuring hand on Sonia's shoulder. She clutched the pirate coin he had given her earlier, rubbing it between her small fingers as if drawing strength from it. Miss Abigail sat beside her, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her worry evident in her furrowed brow. Thomas parked the limo and Johnny quickly stepped out, holding the door open for Sonia and Miss Abigail. Come on, love, Johnny said gently, offering his hand to Sonia. Let's get you the help you need. Sonia hesitated for a brief moment, looking up at the imposing hospital building, then at Johnny. His warm smile reassured her, and she took his hand, letting him lead her through the automatic doors. Inside, the stark white walls and the antiseptic scent of the hospital made Sonia shrink slightly. Johnny sensed her nervousness and gave her hand a small squeeze. "You're not alone, Sonia. We're all here with you." A nurse at the front desk looked up in surprise as Johnny approached. "Mr. Depp?" she asked, momentarily caught off guard. Then her eyes fell on Sonia. "How can I help you?" "We need to get Sonia checked in as soon as possible. She has stage 3 malignant melanoma and needs immediate medical attention," Johnny explained, his tone steady but urgent. The nurse nodded, quickly typing on her computer. "We'll get her a room and have an oncologist see her right away." She glanced at Sonia and smiled warmly. "You're in good hands, sweetheart." Miss Abigail filled out the necessary paperwork, and within minutes, a doctor arrived to escort them to an examination room. Dr. Marvy, a kind-looking man in his late 40s, knelt in front of Sonia with a reassuring smile. "Hello, Sonia. My name is Dr. Marvy and I'll be helping you today. We're going to do a few tests, but I promise we'll take good care of you, okay?" Sonia nodded hesitantly, squeezing Johnny's hand. "I'll be right here," Johnny reassured her. "You're a brave pirate, remember?" With Johnny and Miss Abigail by her side, Sonia went through a series of tests, blood work, scans, and a full assessment of her condition. Hours passed in a blur of medical procedures, Sonia growing more exhausted, but still holding on to Johnny's hand whenever she could. Finally, Dr. Marvy returned with the results, his expression serious but hopeful. "Sonia's condition is critical but not beyond hope," he explained. "We need to start treatment immediately. Surgery to remove the primary tumor is the first step, followed by chemotherapy. The next 48 hours are crucial." Miss Abigail's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. "Is there a chance she'll recover?" she asked shakily. Dr. Marvy nodded. "With aggressive treatment, she has a fighting chance. But time is of the essence. We'll need to prepare her for surgery first thing tomorrow." Johnny didn't hesitate. "Do whatever it takes. Cost is not an issue. Sonia is going to get the best care possible." Dr. Marvy gave him a grateful nod before turning back to Sonia. "How are you feeling, little one?" he asked gently. Sonia glanced at Johnny, then back at Dr. Marvy. "A little scared," she admitted in a small voice. Johnny crouched beside her. "That's okay, love. Even the bravest pirates feel scared sometimes. But you're not alone in this. We're all with you." Sonia managed a small smile. "Will you stay?" Johnny squeezed her hand. "Of course. Every step of the way." That night, as Sonia rested in her hospital bed, Johnny sat beside her, refusing to leave. Miss Abigail had gone back to the orphanage to take care of the other children, promising to return first thing in the morning. Thomas had left to bring back some of Johnny's things, knowing he would be staying for as long as needed. Sonia stirred, blinking up at Johnny. "Captain Sparrow?" Johnny grinned. "Aye, first mate." She hesitated before whispering, "I'm glad I met you." Johnny felt his throat tighten. "Me too, love. Now get some rest. We've got a big adventure ahead." As Sonia drifted off to sleep, Johnny watched over her, determination settling deep within him. He had the power to change this little girl's life, and he would, no matter what it took. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the hospital room blinds, casting a warm glow on Sonia's face. Johnny had barely slept, his mind preoccupied with the surgery ahead. He sat in the chair beside her bed, watching over her as she slowly woke up. "Good morning, Captain Sparrow," she murmured, her voice groggy but filled with warmth. Johnny smiled. "Good morning, my brave first mate. Are you ready for today's adventure?" Sonia hesitated, then nodded. "Aye, Captain. But will you be there when I wake up?" Johnny reached for her small hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Always, love. I'll be right here when you open your eyes." Just then Miss Abigail walked in, followed closely by Dr. Marvy. "Good morning, Sonia," the doctor said gently. "Are you ready?" Sonia nodded, gripping Johnny's hand a little tighter. The nurse entered and began preparing her for surgery, carefully explaining each step. Though she was nervous, Sonia remained brave, her pirate coin clutched tightly in her fist. "All right, Sonia, it's time to go," Dr. Marvy finally said. As they wheeled her towards the operating room, Johnny walked alongside her, never letting go of her hand. When they reached the doors, a nurse gently indicated that he could go no further. Johnny knelt beside Sonia. "I'll see you soon, okay? And when you wake up, we'll plan our next great adventure." Sonia gave him a tired but determined smile. "Okay." With one last squeeze of his hand, she was wheeled inside. The doors shut, leaving Johnny standing in the hallway, his heart heavy with worry. Hours passed like an eternity. Johnny paced the waiting room, his mind replaying every moment of the past few days. Miss Abigail sat nearby, silently praying. Even Thomas had come to wait with them, offering quiet support. Finally, Dr. Marvy appeared, pulling down his surgical mask. Johnny and Miss Abigail stood up instantly. "How is she?" Johnny asked urgently. The doctor smiled. "The surgery was successful. We removed the primary tumor and affected lymph nodes. She'll need follow-up treatments, but for now she's stable." Relief flooded Johnny's face. "Can we see her?" Dr. Marvy nodded. "She's still groggy, but you can go in." Johnny stepped into the dimly lit recovery room, his heart aching at the sight of Sonia. She looked so small against the hospital sheets, but she was alive. He pulled a chair up beside her bed and gently took her hand. Her eyelids fluttered open, and when she saw Johnny, a sleepy smile spread across her lips. "You stayed." Johnny chuckled softly. "Of course, love. You did amazing." Sonia blinked sluggishly. "Did they take out the bad stuff?" "They sure did. And you're going to get stronger every day." Miss Abigail joined them, her eyes full of tears. "You were so brave, sweetheart. We're all so proud of you." Sonia squeezed Johnny's hand weakly. "So what now?" Johnny smiled. "Now you rest and get better. And when you're ready, I've got a surprise for you." Sonia's eyes sparkled with curiosity, but exhaustion soon overtook her. She drifted back to sleep, her pirate coin still gripped tightly in her hand. The next few days were filled with steady recovery. Johnny remained at the hospital, ensuring Sonia had everything she needed. Miss Abigail visited frequently, and the orphanage children sent drawings and letters, lifting Sonia's spirits. One afternoon, Dr. Marvy met with Johnny and Miss Abigail. "She's making good progress. Once she's stable enough, she can continue treatment as an outpatient. She'll need regular checkups, but she has a strong chance at recovery." Johnny nodded. "That's great news. Now about the orphanage." Miss Abigail's eyes widened. "Mr. Depp, you've already done so much." Johnny shook his head. "I meant what I said. Sonia isn't the only child in need. I want to ensure every child there gets the care and support they deserve. I've spoken with my team, and we're setting up a long-term fund for Hope's Haven. Medical care, better facilities, education, whatever you need." Tears welled in Miss Abigail's eyes. "I don't know how to thank you. Just keep doing what you do best, taking care of these kids," Johnny replied. A week later, Sonia was finally discharged. Instead of heading straight back to the orphanage, Johnny had one more surprise waiting for her. As they arrived at a private theater, Sonia's eyes widened. "What is this?" Johnny grinned. "Every pirate needs a proper send-off, don't you think? Tonight we're watching Pirates of the Caribbean. Your first real pirate adventure on the big screen." Sonia gasped, her excitement shining through. "Really? Really?" Johnny confirmed, leading her inside. The theater was filled with her friends from the orphanage, cheering as she walked in. Miss Abigail smiled warmly, touched by Johnny's generosity. As the movie began, Sonia sat beside Johnny, her small hand slipping into his. "Thank you, Captain Sparrow." Johnny squeezed her hand. "Anytime, first mate." As the film played, Sonia's laughter rang through the theater. It was a sound Johnny knew he would cherish forever. A reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could change a life. And for Sonia, this was just the beginning of a brighter future.